Hi guys, I am back, and as promised, the weather's starting to turn here. It's starting to get to October. It is officially October 1st, which means, as promised, I will release my tiny hats for tiny cats. I have mentioned this in my last video, but I've finally gotten a chance to film and edit and all that stuff for the tiny witch's hat for your little Loaf cat. So here is the official video for the tiny witch's hat. So you can see here I've done like a little ballet pink color, but you could do whatever color combination you want. If you want a black hat or purple hat or a green hat, whatever you want, but pattern's always the same. You just change it up how you want to, but it is the cutest little hat for this little Loaf cat. So stay tuned if you want to learn how to make your little witch's hat. I think it's super cute. It's got like a little wonky shape to it, which is intentional. I promise you. It's a little wonky because I wanted it to be wonky because I thought it looked cuter. But yeah, if you would like to learn how to make your own little hat for your chunky cat, you totally can. And I just have a couple of notes before we get started about the pattern, and then we will get right into it. So this pattern uses US terms. I like to work within the round, but I like to do a yarn under combination. Typically, a lot of people learn yarn over, but I have a video on how to yarn under, and I just find it makes the stitches quite a bit tighter. The other thing is that you can use pretty much whatever yarn that you want, but if you want the size to come out exactly as my size did, then I would recommend following the yarn that I use. But if you wanted to put like a witch's hat on a bigger thing, that's totally fine. You can use a bigger yarn and hook size. This is also an advanced beginner pattern. You kind of need to know how to crochet to do this. You need to understand some of the stitches just because we are working so small and because we are working with black yarn. Black is so difficult to see, and when it gets so small with what we're working with, it's a little bit trickier. So I would recommend you at least be an advanced beginner. So let's start with the materials and then we'll get right into the pattern. The pattern is in the description if you prefer to follow the written pattern. Okay, so let's go over materials first. So let's start with the yarn. So for the main color that we're going to use a black yarn. This is a size 3. It's Simply DK, which is an acrylic size 3 or a lightweight yarn, also called DK weight. This is in color 101, which is just black. I love using paint box, specifically the acrylic, because it's nice and soft, and then it also has a huge color range to work with. So I do recommend paint box. Obviously not sponsored. I don't know how to get sponsored by them, even though I exclusively use these products. But yeah, I like using paint box. And then the second color that we're going to be working with is our accent color. It's a little bit overexposed just because I want to make sure you see the black yarn properly, but I'm using a ballet pink color. It's the same size, Simply DK, which is the acrylic DK weight, size 3, and it's in color 152, but it's a nice, like, pretty pink color. I really like it, and I hope they'll go together really well, but of course you can use whatever off color that you want, or if you don't want to use a black for the black hat, you can use whatever color you want. It's completely up to you, but as long as they are the same weight, I would recommend using the same brand as well, just so you know that they're going to work together really well. So that is the yarn that we're using. So next, let's move on to the actual supplies. We are going to be using quite a small hook today. This is a size 2.0 millimeter hook. It is quite small, but that keeps your tension quite tight, and we do want the hat to be, like nice and small. We don't want anything poking through or any holes, so it's going to be quite a small hook that we're going to be using. Of course, you don't have to use this hook if you want to move up to a 2.5 or a 3. That's totally fine. Just make sure you're aware that if you move up in hook size, your piece is going to be bigger. Okay, just FYI. But I'm using a 2.0 millimeter hook. The next thing that we need is some scissors. Just any kind of scissors is totally fine. And then we also need a little tapestry needle or darning needle. I like to use one with a small eye to it just because I feel like I can get in and out of things easier. And then we're gonna need our super handy dandy little stitch marker. You can use a bobby pin, you can use another piece of yarn that's a different color than what you're working with, but I like these little clip ones because I have been using them forever, so whatever your preference is. But these are pretty much all the materials that we need for this project. Okay, so now to start, we're gonna take our black yarn and our crochet hook, and we are gonna make a magic circle of 4. I'm gonna put 4 single crochets into my magic circle. If you don't know how to make a magic circle, you can use the chain 2 and single crochet and second chain from hook method. I definitely prefer the magic circle, and I do have a video on it if you want to check that out to learn how to do that. But I'm just finishing up my magic circle here, and then I'm gonna make sure that I have all 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4 in there, and I'm gonna put my stitch marker on the last stitch that I made just to mark the last stitch of the round, and I know exactly where to stop. So for round 1, I like to call the rounds after my magic circle round 1. So the magic circle to me doesn't count as a round. So round 1 is single crochet around. So we're gonna start in our first single crochet, 1, 2, 3, and then the last one here is 4. There we go. And then just make sure to put your stitch marker back on your last stitch. The next round, so round 2, is going to be single crochet and then increase, and you're going to do that twice. So we'll start in the next stitch over. We're going to start with a single crochet and then find the next stitch, and we're going to increase. And then we will repeat that combination again. So we'll single crochet, and I'll take my stitch marker off because that's my last stitch, and then we will increase. So we should have a final stitch count of 6 at the end of that round. Put your stitch marker back on so you know exactly where you ended, and you'll have this little nubbin. That's kind of where we're going here. We're making the top of the hat right now. Okay, so for round 2, this is going to be a little bit different than the previous round. We are going to single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, and then in the next stitch over, we are going to increase. Put 2 stitches into 1 stitch for your increase, and then in the next stitch over, we are going to increase again. And then finish off with single crocheting 2. 1, take off your stitch marker, and 2. It gets a little bit easier as you go because it's not as tight up at the top anymore. We've added a couple stitches, so we should have 8 stitches now. And your piece will look a little bit like this. It's kind of veering off towards the right, or depending on how you're holding it, maybe the left. We are going to single crochet 3, and then we are going to increase. So that pattern we're going to do twice. So single crochet 3, and then increase into the 4th stitch. Doing it again. So 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and then I'll take my stitch marker out, and then we are going to increase into that 4th stitch. So now we should have a total of 10 stitches. So now going into the 5th row, or sorry, the 5th round, we are going to single crochet all the way around. So single crochet 10 stitches. stitch is the 10th stitch. So 10 stitches all the way around of just single crochet. And then for the next round, we are going to single crochet 4 and then increase, and we'll do that pattern twice. So single crochet 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then increase into the 5th stitch. And then we'll do that again. So single crochet 4, and then in the 5th stitch, we increase. So now we should have a total of 12 stitches in that round. The next round is going to be a similar pattern, but we are going to single crochet 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and careful not to split your stitches, 5, and then we will increase into the 6th stitch, and then do that again. So single crochet 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we are going to increase into that 6th stitch. There we go. And now we should have 14 stitches. Okay, so for the next round, we are going to do a similar pattern again, and we are going to single crochet 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we are going to increase into the 7th. So 1, 2 stitches into that 1 stitch to do an increase. And then we are going to do that again. So single crochet 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we are going to increase into the 7th. Last increase, and then put your stitch marker back on. Okay, so now we get a little bit crazy. Not actually. So that's pretty much the top of your hat. So now we need to start making it go straight outwards. And to do that, we pretty much add a bunch of increases. So for the next round, we are going to simply single crochet and increase. However, to make it go more flat outwards, we are only going to do it in the front loop only. So if you see my other videos, I kind of like to use these front loop onlys to make kind of a flat bottom. And to do that, we pick up the front loop of each stitch. So it's very difficult to see when you have black yarn, but look for your V's, and instead of going into both stitches, or both loops, sorry, we are only going to go into half the stitch and pick up that front loop. So we are going to single crochet into that first stitch. So single crochet, and then in the front loop only of the next one as well, we are going to increase. 1, 2 stitches into 1. So all the way around, we are going into the front loop only and repeating this pattern of single crochet and then increase. So there's my single crochet and then increase. Only in the front loops. Just remember, front loop only, single crochet and then increase. You should end up on an increase. That increase should be your last stitch, and this is kind of what it looks like. So if you've done it right, you should end up on an increase as the last stitch, and you should have 24 stitches all the way around. And then for this next part, we are going to single crochet 3 and then increase, and we're going to do that all the way around, all the way to the end. Okay, editing Megan coming in for like 1 second. So I totally forgot to tell you that you are going to go back into both loops. So For the previous round, we only did front loop only, but now for this round, we are going back into both loops, just doing normal stitches, like not front loop only, not back loop only. We are going into both loops, okay? Totally forgot to mention that when I was doing the voiceover, but got it, okay? All right, let's go back. Single crochet 3, 2, 3, and then we are going to increase in that 4th stitch. So you're gonna repeat that pattern all the way around. So 1, 2, 3, and then increase into the 4th. 1, 2, 3, and then increase. So if you get to this part and you're like, okay, I don't have enough stitches, it's probably because you've skipped a stitch or missed a stitch, but I have 3 left plus an increase that I can work with. So 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is going to be an increase. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to finish it up. So 1, 2, and 3, and then an increase into my last stitch. There we go. So you should have something like this now. So it's kind of got this little knobby section right here, which I've kind of designed it like that just because I think it looks silly to have a little little bump here, but has a little knob. And then you can see on the underside of this, you have your back loops that you haven't stitched into, which is perfect. We want the back loops to remain free so we can sew them in onto our little cats later. So we'll use those stitches remaining for our last stitching in up onto the cat. So we have this now, and we are going to make a slip stitch into the next stitch over and pull up that loop. Take your scissors, cut that off, and pull out that yarn. And here's where we're gonna take our darning needle, and we are gonna create an invisible stitch in the next stitch over. So I'm gonna find my last stitch here, which you can see is going into this one, and I'm gonna go over and go under both loops of the next stitch over and bring that through. Don't pull too tight or else you're not going to be able to see your stitches. And then it's kind of hard to see, but you want to go into the back loop only of your slip stitch. It's really hard to see because it's black, but look for that back loop only of the slip stitch, not the single crochet that you did last. You're going into the slip stitch, back loop only, and underneath this yarn. And you're gonna pull that through. So this creates kind of like a little bind off section, so it's not as noticeable that you have like a big step down from your previous round. And then you're gonna flip the hat over so you can see the underside. And all we're gonna do is we are going to weave in our yarn until it's kind of where those back loop only sections are. So just to the middle, and kind of straighten this little area out. It's no big deal if you have a little bump, that's totally fine. And then kind of go right up against where those back loop only round is, right there. We're gonna leave this, we're not gonna cut this anymore. And I kind of like to just leave it off to the side for now. You can tuck your starting strand, it should be still tucked in there, but you can tuck that in to the rest of the hat, just to where that tip is. And there we go. We got something like this hat shape kind of thing. So I know where my back is, but just keep in mind that your back is where this little bump is, and that is where we are going to start putting our little detail on. Okay, so now we are gonna start with our accent color. So we have our hat, and we're gonna essentially attach this yarn onto here using basically slip stitches. So we are gonna find the back of our piece, and we're gonna try and find kind of where we started going into the front loops only. So I'm gonna do mine on a little bit of an angle because we know that when we're working in the round, it'll spiral and the rounds won't completely add up. So we're gonna have to kind of overlap some rows here, or some rounds. So I'm gonna go like this, kind of on an angle in between the rounds. So going in through one little hole and out through the next. If you pull apart your piece, it'll kind of naturally show you where those little holes are. And we're gonna be working around those little holes. So here's my hook within the piece. We're gonna take our yarn and just be patient with yourself here. You're gonna leave a little bit of lagging yarn here, and you're gonna just place it over top of your hook with the ball of yarn coming from this side and just the end off that side. You're gonna hold it in your hand just like you normally would hold your yarn and pull it up through just where you had your crochet hook in. Now you're gonna make sure that you are grabbing your yarn from the ball of yarn, not the cut yarn, and you're gonna wrap it over your hook, and you're just gonna pull it through that loop on your hook. So it's basically a slip stitch, except we're going through a piece. Now we're going into the hole that we previously came out of, so in where that yarn is, and over to the left one whole stitch, like H-O-L-E hole. And then we're gonna yarn over and bring up that loop and go through the loop on our hook. So then go back down where your yarn looks like it's coming up from and over to the left one hole, yarn over, pull up, and then pull through. Just be patient. Try and not do this too tight because you'll cinch your hat a little bit tighter, so it'll be very bulbous like that. But you're gonna go all the way around, slowly working and putting basically slip stitches all the way around. So pulling up that loop and then going through, making sure not to go too tight because then you won't see your stitches as well. And try not to split your stitch either. So I kind of pull up a little bit more. So in, pull up that loop. I pull it up farther than I normally would, just so I can get it into that stitch without my tension being super tight. And then one more here. We're gonna connect it back together. Can you see exactly where I went? So into the hole that the yarn just came out of, over one to lead back up to where we initially started, yarn over, and then through the loop there. So now we have ended up with something like this. If you can see, our yarn is coming from all the way over here, so I want to get it a little bit closer. And to do that, we're gonna do another slip stitch. So you are gonna go underneath those two loops right here that we started off with. I'm gonna move that off to the side. You can see these two little strings right there. We're gonna go underneath those, yarn over again, and then bring up that loop and pull through both. See, there we go. Okay, so now we're just going to cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail so we can tie it and pull out that string. You can set your crochet hook off to the side now, and we are going to make the little bow that goes on the back. So I like to do it like this with it upside down. I find it easier, and we're just gonna tie a little bow. I find it easier to go upside down. I have no idea why, but just be patient with this part as well, because you'll end up with something like this and you're like, okay, this is like too loopy. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna pinch, you're just gonna put your thumb over top of that knot that we made from that bow, and you're gonna take each strand and make the loops smaller. So now we have it sideways, so we need to fix that up. And all we do is we kind of reposition, pull this one down, you know, find out where those little tails fit best, if they fit behind your little bow or if they fit best in front. I like to retighten as I go. So retighten a couple times, put my finger over, make those loops a little bit smaller. And then once I'm happy with it, I will trim the excess. So I like that little bow, I think it's cute. And then we are going to just trim the yarn tails. I like to have them quite short, but you can trim them longer or wherever you find they fit well. So then we have our little hat. So this again is the string that we will use to sew it onto our little cat. But you can see our little bow. If you definitely don't want this to come undone, I would take some fabric glue. I frequently use this one. Just use some fabric glue and put a little dot of glue right on top, just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere or it doesn't come undone. But there you go. So there is your little hat. Okay, so now when we're sewing it in, all we're gonna do is we are going to take our darning needle, find the back of the piece again, so that's where your bow is. Position it kind of in between the ears. I like to try and push it up as far as possible. You're gonna rotate it back so you can see the stitches. Place it down again so you can see exactly where it's gonna go and exactly where your little yarn tail is coming off of. You don't want to pull it too far out. And then you're just going to take your needle and go up and down through your stitches, kind of where these little colorful loops are. You're just going to stitch it down until we go all the way around. So just go over a stitch. I like to go into the same stitch and then over a stitch, all the way around. If you have to skip a stitch because there's nowhere to place it, that's totally fine. You don't have to do absolutely every single one, but at least every other one, so you can get a nice secure hat on your cat. So just pull back your hat, go up and down, all the way across. Take a second every couple of stitches just to make sure you're on the right track, and then we're going to continue. Okay, so I'm just kind of doing the last little stitch here, just bringing it down, and then we are going to secure it to the piece. So tilt it back again, find another stitch, that first stitch that we created to secure it into the piece. I'm just gonna go right through that one, and then we're gonna make a little loop from that, and we're gonna go through that loop with our darning needle and then pull it tight. Try not to pull too tight because we'll cinch the piece too much, but just tight enough that it's secured, and then we are going to hide the yarn tail through the piece. Whoop, got a little runaway there. So just try and pull and pinch this to make it look nice. I like to bring the ears out a little bit just so we can see them. And then once you're happy with your placement, all you have to do is cut the excess, give your little cat a squish to hide that yarn, and then we got something like this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that pattern, that little tiny witch's hat for your little loaf cat. If you do, please give it a thumbs up or comment or share it or whatever the YouTube things are. I always like teasing my next video, so the next pattern that I'm going to be putting out is super special, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you guys like it. But if you want to support me through any of my other patterns, I do have a bunch of original designs. You can check them out on Etsy. I'm always slowly working on them and making new patterns, so if you want to check out Etsy or Ko-fi, those links are down below. But for the newest edition that I am going to be working on for YouTube tutorials is this guy. I love him so much. He is so incredibly cute. And I'm super excited to share this pattern with you. Of course, it will be free. It is a fan art pattern, so all of my fan art patterns are free. If you want any of my other fan art patterns that are written, you can check out Ravelry. I'm taking a little bit of a TLC break from Twitch, just to focus more on YouTube and to focus more on my daily life things. But of course, I always love to hear your suggestions. If you have any suggestions for me, I've kind of wanted to take you through all of the other interests that I have, including with plants or DIYs. I've taken a little bit of time from Twitch to start doing that kind of stuff, and it's been bringing me so much joy. So you can always follow me on Twitch. I don't know when I'm going to be streaming again, and I'm always on Discord. All of my links are down below. So I hope you guys stick around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!